Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 201 of the NZXT podcast, the official podcast of the NZXT community. This podcast is recorded live on Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on the official NZXT Twitch. It is available to stream on demand on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. My name is Mike, and with me, as always, is Ivan. How are you doing, Ivan?
How it do, baby boo? Happy Friday. Excited for another episode of the NZXT podcast. Before we introduce our special guest for today, I have a couple of announcements. Announcement number one is if you are tuned in live right now to twitch.tv/NZXT, you are in for a treat. We are giving away a $100 gift card from our good buddies over at FlyQuest. You can use a gift card to buy any swag you want on their shop. So type exclamation giveaway in the chat. You will get a link that will explain how to enter. And the other announcement I want to make is if you are tuned in live as well and you are an NZXT club member, you are also in for a bonus treat because we are giving away Poochie points. And if you don't know what Poochie points are or what the NZXT club is, go to nzxt.co/club and you'll learn all about it. The last announcement I want to make today before we get into it is today is the last day of our new stuff giveaway. So last week we announced our new H3, which is right behind me. New H9, some Krakens, some fans, etc. We're giving them all away. Today is the last day you can enter that giveaway, and to enter that one, go to nzxt.co/giveaway. Without further ado, I will let Mike introduce who we're talking to today. Mike, take it away.
Alrighty, everyone. Please give a little warm applause from the man from the land down under to the heart of League of Legends. Today's guest has worn more hats in esports than most of us own in our own closets. He's seen the game from just about every angle, from behind the desk, in the draft, and now at the helm of an entire organization. Everyone, please welcome PapaSmithy. PapaSmithy, please, can you introduce yourself and tell the people who you are and what you do?
Hello. I love the round of applause. Not a hat guy, interestingly, but your point is taken. Definitely many vantage points to see esports, all the way from playing it before I even understood there was competitive gaming, playing semi-professionally in Australia, to casting, to general manager, to now co-lead of an esports org. So I imagine you guys will have questions from all those vantage points. But yeah, currently my title is the President Chief Gaming Officer of FlyQuest. You talk to my better half, some would argue. He would definitely argue Brian Anderson many months ago back on this podcast, and he and I are at the front of all things FlyQuest. So if there's things you like, if there's things you don't like, if you have a good opinion about French fries, which we were talking about off air, no bad opinions, please. Direct it all my way. I'm the FlyQuest guy.
And I do detect a slight Australian accent, right?
Only a slight one, though, sir, because I will say, if you go back to my early casting, so we'll be talking 2012 to first half of 2015 casting, was casting from Australia, a lot of it from my bedroom, a couple of smaller events in the Australian scene, a lot stronger accent. Some more shrimps on the barbie, as some people would say. But I will say, without consciously doing it, when I moved to Korea to cast, a lot of my co-casters were Americans. Hadn't really had a lot of exposure to Americans outside of TV shows when I was growing up. And without trying to conform, my accent kind of drifted, I guess I would say. And people could say change. I think it was more of a drift, it was gradual. I think it's one of those... I feel like I drifted towards kind of a broadcaster accent. People talk about radio English and things like that. I guess some of the words kind of conformed more to my co-casters or American viewers. And then now people will always look at me quizzically when I speak and try to detect a hint of something. And I feel self-conscious because I'm an Aussie at heart for sure. And when I'm back in Australia, like I was for IM Melbourne with the Counter-Strike boys a month ago, definitely it comes out a bit more, but yeah, a little bit muted, which is something I'm self-conscious about, but something you have to embrace.
So would you say you were a big gamer when you were young, growing up in Australia?
Definitely gaming was a central thing for me. If I think about the games that defined me in the early 90s, I was born in 1987 for context. In the early 90s, we always had a PC. We didn't really have like a home console, so I didn't have a Super Nintendo or anything like that. The first console I ever owned was a original Game Boy. So as you can imagine, Pokemon Red and Blue. I was like 8, 9 years old, like definitely like right smack bang in the middle of the Pokemon cartoon and the early first wave of Pokemon games. Earlier than that, so a lot of those kind of like Eastern European strategy games in the early 90s. I remember Centurion, which was like a ancient Rome kind of like simulator. Like most people these days would know like Rome Total War and those kind of like more sophisticated like ancient times like simulators. So this is very much the progenitor kind of games with a lot more, pixel graphics and stuff like that. Lots of skullduggery and going to war with different parts of Carthage or the ancient areas. And then platformers, like I think of like the Aladdin platformer or Lion King and the other games that were big in the mid 90s. Like those were the formative games. But when it comes to esports, that was definitely something that caught me by surprise. I wasn't into the typical esports titles of the time. Pre-League of Legends, it was StarCraft 2 were the big games of that time. And I played original StarCraft in the very early days, which means that when I wanted to play with my friends, I was dialing up their phone number because it was before the internet was really fast enough at the time. And you would call them. It would use your kind of like actual dial tone. If your mum picked up the phone to call someone else, the game would disconnect. That was the vibe that was going on there. But yeah, I wasn't aware that, the wonderful wild world of esports had already started in Korea at that time. And it definitely came to that a lot later.
And in case you didn't know, Mike, phones can do more than social media. They used to make phone calls back in the day.
I grew up with the whole, I'm not that young.
Oh, okay. You rattled off a bunch of games there. Shout out Aladdin. I have not heard of that game in a long time.
Good game.
What would you say was your favorite childhood game growing up?
It's always hard to pick just one, right? Definitely there was some games on my original Game Boy I enjoyed a lot. The easy kind of like crowd pleasers Pokemon, right? Like obviously I was, obsessed with first and second generation Pokemon. You can definitely tell someone's age by like what their favorite Pokemon title was. And for me, it was definitely Gold and Silver, the second generation. I was, at that time, I'd already moved from Australia to the Middle East. I lived in Abu Dhabi, like near Dubai for my high school years. So I was probably like, I want to say like 13 when Gold Silver came out. I was so keen to play it that I played through it in Japanese with a game FAQ, a walkthrough. So obviously I didn't take in a lot of the intricacies of it, and then played through like slightly illegal, like partially translated version back when you could like buy those. It was still the Wild West in those days, and then bought the original English translation. So played through it, I think 3 times wholesale. I was so keen for it. So I think Pokemon's probably the easiest answer there, and I'm sure it resonates because Pokemon's still a massive thing around the world.
Not a bad answer. What would you say is your favorite game now?
I will admit that I have recently gotten into this indie title. Not a lot of people know it. I'm kind of outing myself for even talking about it, but I'm playing League of Legends recently.
Never heard of that.
Let's go.
I first picked it up a long time ago. I actually haven't played it in about 5 years. I've been like more of a viewer. Like I still like ingest like, many hours of League of Legends content every day. But, I'm getting older, so my hands don't do what they used to. So I kind of dropped it, but been on a League of Legends kick for the last, I want to say 3 months. I'm very much like a, solo ranked only kind of guy. Like I'm not a big community guy, although we did have a fun community ARAM a few months ago. So ultimately, yeah, been playing some League of Legends, but apart from that, definitely more of a viewer, more of a guy in Twitch chat than a game player these days.
You're known for casting League of Legends. Like that's like the legend in the making. But before you became a caster, apparently you worked as a school psychologist in Australia for a bit. Can you explain why you went into that field and then why you left that for gaming?
Yeah, sure. Definitely growing up, I kind of my childhood, or at least my like traditional education, was in two parts up till the end of grade 8, which is end of 99. I would have been about 12. Was just in the Western Australian schooling system, going through things there. And then my dad, just around the turn of the millennium, got a job in the Middle East. So jumped over to the Middle East for high school, obviously very, very culturally different to Australia. And then post that, very much wanted to go back to Australia. In terms of what to study, I was always the like generic clever kid, but I was kind of the sort of person who knew what they didn't want to study rather than like what my calling was going to be. Like, wasn't really into kind of like the hard sciences. Like, they didn't really appeal to me. The push from my dad was very much like, go into a field that makes a lot of money, son, was kind of like his generic plea. So he was very disappointed when, from a schooling perspective, we were doing international curriculum. So first did GCSEs for year 9 and 10, which is the British system. And then for year 11 and 12 don't know if you guys are familiar with the International Baccalaureate, or the IB, which is kind of like generally, at least at the time, considered like the most difficult pre-college kind of like thing to study. And that's where you like choose your courses. And I decided to try psychology, and you had to choose different courses at different levels, like standard level and higher level, which is like you just have a bigger course load and more intricacies if you go higher level. And I think my higher levels I chose were economics, English, and math. And then did psychology at standard level because I, was like, hey, this could be interesting. And I got there on the first day of school when you're 11, and they had like accidentally misassigned me to standard level math and higher level psychology. And I was like, okay, might as well roll with this for a week and see what it's like. And psychology was the first thing that really grabbed me in terms of like, oh, I want to like build something with this. I didn't really know what that meant, but it was like I was into it. So did psychology. It was the first time in my life I had math only 4 days a week rather than 5. And I was like kind of like flexing on other people because most people were doing higher level math, because obviously that's like the conventional path. As we'll get into, I have eschewed the traditional path many, many times. I think all of us have. It led us to this lovely podcast all those years later. And yeah, went into psychology, took it seriously at school, enjoyed it, wanted to study at university. Parents were still a little bit like, could you please study like one of those like traditional vocations? So did a double degree with commerce and arts. At that time, psychology could be viewed as an art or a science. So when it came to the complementary courses, because you couldn't just take full psychology at like a first year level, I did like introduction to Japanese and kind of like some other like linguistics, like some other like standard level stuff on the art side. And then commerce was to make my dad happy. And after a year, dropped the commerce side, really focused on the psychology side, did a 5.5 year honors and graduate diploma in education in psychology with a double major in school psychology and a minor in special needs. I think for me, I've always had a mindset of wanting to give back. Even when I was young, I like wanted to do more for people. And even at that age, I thought about school as this time where if you could give people the tools to blossom, you're like making a really big impact on their life. Like it felt like a very important time to set people up for success. And definitely there were days where I felt like I wasn't set up for success. And so I was already like ready to help people. So yeah, studied that, did that for 5.5 years. When it comes to a school council in Australia, it's a government kind of like a government supported thing where like every school gets like a certain amount of access to someone like me or to a school counselor provided to them as a state resource depending on like the size of their school and where it's located and things like that. And from the practitioner's perspective, it's like a kind of like a rural doctor system where like your first posting, everyone wants to stay in the city, right? They want to be in the major city, which would have been Perth for me, but they obviously need people out in the country. So for the first time, I was living 3.5 hours away from Perth in a place called Merredin, which is in the wheat belt. So very much like a super rural place compared to what I was used to. And yeah, going around a group of schools there, both primary school and secondary school, trying to help people out for 2.5 years while playing this League of Legends game that we were talking about, underground indie title. Yeah.
I've heard of it.
And with all that going on in your life, what the heck inspired you to want to do casting?
Yeah, so wouldn't have made sense to start with casting. And like I said, when I started playing League of Legends, we were playing on the American server. There was no Australian server. So was invited to join this group of people, which was like basically the 4chan community on League of Legends. Because at that time, there was like League of Legends chat channels. And so /V, which is the video game kind of subreddit or sub part of 4chan, even though I didn't visit 4chan, was kind of thrust to join that. So I was in my first like gaming community. And from there, you'd queue up. And at that time, ping was public. Like, you know, when you queued up in the loading room, it had ping. And that actually helped you understand like where people were from. And definitely people like overgeneralize people's pings as like, oh, he must be, you know, from Brazil, he must be from Australia. At that time, like South Korea also played on, you know, the American server. It was just, there was a US server and a Europe server. There wasn't anywhere, there were no other servers at the time. So eventually queued into people who were like, wait, like you have 220 ping, which is what I was playing on at the time. Like, you must be Australian. And so I was like one of the highest rated Australian players in season 1 and preseason 1. Was invited to join an Australian community, and from there ended up on the second strongest Australian League of Legends team, professional team. Obviously, a lot of inverted commas there. It was very much the no money mousepad era, and so was doing that while being a school counselor. I was a lot older than everybody else that was playing. You know, it was like kind of like 16 to 18 kind of people, and I was already would have been about 25 at that time. So veteran status, even though I was still too new to the game. And once kind of like that came to light, I wasn't like, my ID wasn't PapaSmithy at the time. It was like a kind of a C Smith thing, like, you know, very much just like my like actual name. And I always prized myself on being kind of like aware of the nitty gritty of the game. Again, at that time, there was no like LOL fandom, or in client, there was very, very little information. Like now, if you buy a long sword, you get 10 AD, and then your skills that have AD scaling will be like, oh, it does 6 more damage now. At that time, it was very much like Sion does his ability, and if you buy AD, it'll do a lot more damage. So that was like the sort of text you would get. Like there was no specifics. So you kind of went into custom games and hit things, and then were like, bought a long sword and were like, okay, I think it does 6 more. Like all of this was like emergent, like stuff that was like way behind from the public consciousness. And so I did a lot of that testing. So like I knew a lot about League of Legends. I was like kind of more like the village elder right before like there was, you know, like, you know, the internet and like Wikipedias and things like that. So I knew a lot about League. And so when I played my first pro match, they were like, oh, the commentators will join. Like this is going to be streamed. And that was actually my first ever understanding that there was really esports. Like I didn't really know about it at the time. It was like my first game was being broadcast. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like who are these commentators? Like this is pre-Twitch TV. So I think it was on Justin TV at the time. And so loaded that up, wasn't aware there was like personal streaming and things like that. Obviously it was very, very small at that time. And thought it was cool. And my first thought was like, oh, I know a lot about League of Legends. Like maybe I could be like a co-commentator. Because I think at that time, like when you weren't playing, it was pretty common for like current pros to be like the guest analyst at the time. So I fancied myself that I could do it too. So yeah, took on the mic with Pastry Time, who went on to be an LCS caster in his own right, is now a producer over at the LTA, and got good feedback from doing it once. And so at that time was kind of like, there wasn't really much of a scrim culture. Again, it's like, very, very much in the early days. So I was playing semi-competitively and casting and a school counselor full time. So was doing a lot of different things, fingers in many pies. That's probably something that stuck with me for a long time. Eventually it became unsustainable to play and work and commentate. So I kind of had to choose one of them. And I was like, look, I'm going to get outscaled as a player. I was a jungler at the time. I know that's going to make at least one person on this call very happy. And so went with the commentary route because I thought I could like marry that with my schedule as a school counselor. And yeah, it blossomed from very, very much community casting with 3 to 10 to 20 to 50 viewers to something a lot bigger.
And I know you started covering League of Legends in Australia, where it was really growing around 2012. And then you had this like 7-year stretch where you just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until you officially started casting for Riot in 2019. Was that a difficult journey, or was it something that just came natural to you?
Yeah, again, at that time, if people ask me about 2025, I say the world feels a lot smaller. And by that, I mean you can share friendships and have like access to people all around the world, instant translation, fast internet, all those things. Like at this time, everything was harder. And broadband penetration to like, remote areas and like all parts of the world was a lot lower. So if you were from Western Australia, the story I always tell, I was actually talking to, there's probably only 2 people from Western Australia who've like gone on to really get out and become kind of like very well known, at least especially in the casting realm. Would be myself and Sponge, who's one of the biggest Counter-Strike casters in the world. We're both Perth boys. Like when I joined my semi-pro team, the advantage of playing semi-pro is there would be like LANs in the East Coast. So we're talking about Sydney and Melbourne, once every few months. And so, having a sponsor basically meant they would like, pay for your flights to go there. There wasn't really any other compensation. I remember I joined and the captain at the time messaged me and was like, so the first thing that happened when the sponsor found out you were from Western Australia is they asked if we could drop you, because like, obviously it's a very long flight. We're talking 5+ hour flight. Like it's very expensive to go from Perth to the East Coast. It's far. The one thing that surprises Americans the most about Australia is like, wait, it doesn't look that big. I'm like, yes, they shrink it for the map. Like that's not actually accurate. So Australia is really, really huge. And so given that, being in esports in Western Australia, like for context, so we talked about ping before, right? Like the ping from Sydney, Melbourne to the American server was probably about 110 to 130. New Zealand was about 80, and we were on 230. So like, like 210 to 230 ping. So like it's a lot worse. It's just really far from everything. And so it's very inhospitable to kind of make too much of yourself from Western Australia and esports. Again, easier in 2025, but definitely very difficult in 2012. So at the time, as a school counselor, we eventually, it's a funny story. We found out, I found out by accident that the Australian server was going to be started in 2013. I don't know if it was LinkedIn or progenitor of LinkedIn, but there was like this, like, I remember being linked something that's like, oh, this like Riot executive just updated their, let's say LinkedIn, and it says that they're going to be the CEO of Riot Games Australia, but there'd been no like public announcement about it or anything. And so naturally I DM'd that person. His name was Mirko Gozzo, who's been around the esports industry for a long time, Italian guy. And he confirmed that yes, there's going to be an Australian server. We're going to launch it at PAX Australia 2013. Would love you and Pastry Time to be commentators there for like this big event that we're going to do. And so alongside the same time as basically I requested some time off from work. I don't know if there were sick days or vacation days, who knows. Yeah, I went to commentate some community events like PAX Australia, and the commentary stuff started to get a little bit more serious. We had a couple of advantages. The main one was we were willing to work unpaid. I probably commentated over 1,000 hours of League of Legends before I made Ascent from casting. There just wasn't money at that time. Again, it was a different time. This is not advice for someone coming up to cast right now. I'm sure we can talk about that later. It's very much like sign of the times. So we did B streams and things like that without payment for ESL back when they were doing a lot of the League of Legends circuit. And then, yeah, I was paid out to fly out to do a couple of community events. Really, really enjoyed it. Every time I left my office on a Thursday to have like a long weekend, like flying around Australia to commentate League of Legends and come back and then sit in my office on a Monday morning, it was just harder and harder each time to because it's like 3 days where you're like doing exactly the thing you love and it's like such a rush, and then you're like in your office being like, wait, like, was that a dream? Like, did that really happen?
Yeah.
And it just kind of became harder and harder. And then ultimately started to get notoriety because I was doing. So the big break we got from like 10 to 30 viewer Australian games was that Taipei Assassins, TPA, won the Season 2 World Championship. And at that time, there was no Riot league based out of China, let alone Taiwan. Like it was just like cups, online cups and things like that. And so given that, we got the opportunity to cast like the first games that Taipei Assassins played after the Season 2 World Championships. And so that got a lot of viewership, as you can expect, because people are like, wait, like, when do these guys play? Like, they just came out of nowhere and won the World Championship. Like, who are they? And so we were starting to get like 10,000 to 30,000 viewers in English for those games. And that like built our brand. And then, yeah, doing these community tournaments, growing. It got to a point where there was promise that there could be a full-time thing in casting for me. And I had this sliding doors moment because, like, as you can tell from what I was saying about my dad earlier, I always thought that I was on this kind of like conveyor belt in my life where, you know, you go to school, you get a government job, they show you the 10-year pay scale. If you save your money, you can get a mortgage. Like, I was very much trapped in like a traditional mindset. And then I just sat in my office one day and I was like, I couldn't fully commit to casting, obviously, because I had like limited amounts of days off and things like that. I sat there and wondered, like, what if I don't give this my all? Like, how much of a regret would it be? And I definitely had this resolution that I had to give it my all, that I had to like go down the road less traveled. And it was the best decision I ever made. I tried to make it sensibly. Like, I had a plan B and things like that, but I just gave myself like a year to find a permanent thing in commentary that wasn't just freelance gigs. It took the whole year. Like, it was definitely in month 12 where something came together, but got a full-time gig casting out of the Riot Sydney studio in 2015. And so that was when I covered the LPL and the Oceanic Pro League for 6 months. My dream from meeting him was to join Monte Cristo and Doha over in Korea, working for OGN. That was like what I really wanted to do. That job came about in the second half of 2015. So I moved to Korea in the middle of 2015 and commentated for, at the time, OGN, before Riot Korea took over the broadcast for 3.5 years, and Spo TV in 2018 as well, who were the other rival broadcaster. And then 2019, Riot Korea took over the broadcast and worked with Riot for a year. So yeah, based in Korea for the better part of 4.5 years, working for first a television network and then to Riot Games Korea, and also working the international events with Riot from 2016 onwards.
I haven't heard OGN in the longest time. My goodness, that was like, wait, I don't remember the studios that they were in, but they were over here by Santa Monica, like, or before Santa Monica. I don't remember, but I did a bunch of shows early on in my career where OGN not owned, but like renting out, like, I think it was like Studio 20. And they were doing all of like the PUBG stuff, a bunch of League of Legends things. I haven't heard that name in a minute. Oh my goodness. And
you're only talking about the US expedition, which was like definitely a side project for them. I mean, most people, like, the history of esports is lost, but the first ever broadcast network for esports was OGN in 2001. So like OGN was around
Wow.
for an extremely long time with StarCraft 1 or StarCraft Brood War.
Got it.
At that time, Kastajun, who's known as like Korean hype guy for international events, you would have seen him with his Shija Kagusumida, like getting the game,
Yeah.
let the games begin. Actually, funnily enough, I actually have a prop for this. 1 second.
Yeah. While you do that, I think I was wasting my time being 10 years old during that time instead of watching the broadcast and investing into housing.
Mm-hmm. So this we have here is something that I requisitioned, which is Kastajun's merch. He actually has his own merch that just opened up this year, which says let the games begin" in Korean.
Yeah.
He's been a play-by-play commentator for StarCraft 1 into League of Legends for the better part of 25 years now. And he started on those OGN days. So I was working for OGN, which was under CJ E&M. If you ever Google them and look at their market cap, they're like one of the chaebol companies, or like in Korea, there's like 5 to 7 massive companies that do everything from like make rice to like make music videos. You know what I mean? Like they're very, very differentiated.
Yeah.
So I was working under CJ E&M, and yeah, they were like mostly like music videos and things like that, but they also had this like 24-hour gaming channel, of which League of Legends coverage was by far the biggest thing they did, and that was a rush. Like they were a dream company to work for sure. And then we were always goading them to open up an NA office, and I think honestly they waited too long. Like by the time they opened the office, like Riot had like removed their broadcast rights. They were kind of like in desperation mode, trying to make anything work. And PUBG was the thing they zeroed in on. And it was like, pass fail, does PUBG become as big as League of Legends and Overwatch League? And it didn't, obviously. So that ended up being a limiter. But the expertise they had and the people they had on staff, like they had true wizards of esports production, and a lot of them now are at Riot Korea and like around the world. Like the brain drain to a lot of them went back to music videos. So like there's a chance that you're watching a K-pop music video and the same guy who made like Fake It Look Like a Complete Badass 10 years earlier is like now doing a New Jeans music video. But yeah, it was a great time in my life for sure.
So I kind of want to go a little bit into, because you spent a lot of time in during the LCK, like do you have like an idea of what makes the LCK so special, both to cast and to watch?
I think there's like a lot of this, like as you can imagine, as a commentator, everyone would ask the like obvious question of like, why is this era of Korean dominance like exists and things like that. I think that in Korea, the unique thing there is just how everything's so hyper specialized to make being an esports competitor and viewer easy and straightforward. Like Seoul is such a ubiquitous place. Like you don't have a lot of regional disparity. Like everyone is in Seoul, can get to Seoul fast. The internet was always extremely fast. And so there were no issues there. There were esports elders. And by that, I mean, there were ex-StarCraft 1 pros who had retired and maybe gone through the army and come back, who could like be good mentors around how to be, work-life balance or lack of, how to be in esports, what should an esports professional look like. Like we were already, League of Legends was already like second, third generation esports. And so having people to direct the next generation is always extremely helpful to kind of like increase the floor of what competition can look like. So I think the professionalism that the early nascent kind of 2012 Korean esports League of Legends scene had was always a lot higher than the West. When, if you think back to 2012 to 2015 North America, you're looking at like first wave streaming culture kind of propelling everything, right? Like the biggest players and decision makers were also the biggest streamers. They were kind of like thinking about their brand when they made roster decisions. Gaming houses were, content factories more than like, this is exactly how we can get peak performance. Like the peak performance era was like 2018 onwards, if you know what I mean, from like the franchising kind of like brought that in. But the original data point that kind of like built out a scene in Korea versus North America and Europe was so different. And I think that's like the easiest way you can like organize your thoughts on it. And then in Korea, again, because it was a second, third generation thing, and because PC gaming was the like by far the most common kind of way to game. Like obviously North America is a console country by heart, even though we're all PC gamers here, PC power gamers at that. Whereas in Korea it was go to the LAN cafe or the PC bang as they call it and play with your friends was like what everyone did. Like I grew up in arcades, which is like, now like a completely lost art, but probably a bit closer to the standard kind of like North American experience of someone my age. PC gaming is so ubiquitous there that third generation, esports has already been a normalized thing. It's not like encouraged, it's still like I wish you would go and join Samsung and do something with your life. It's still the way it is, but it's like appreciated because it's been glorified on television for 20 years. It's just like such a different setting to come up in. And I think the moment you like can understand how something began, it helps you to look back and understand why things developed the way they did in different regions of the world.
Absolutely. I still remember I started around 2012, like in actual like doing gaming and esports stuff, specifically in collegiate. And I still remember everybody that had any opinion about anything in gaming and esports, both professionally and just like watching, all the feedback was like the Koreans and just all of Asia is doing it. So it's so like they're like 10 years ahead. So anything that we have here in the US that we're building here in the US has already been created 10 years ago overseas. And I still remember like people kind of going out of their way completely to try and catch these matches, whether it was like, this isn't tied to Riot Games specifically. I think in all of esports that existed, StarCraft being super prominent back then too, same thing. The feedback was everyone overseas is just doing it so much better than the US. We're like 5 to 10 years behind at minimum. So we modeled a lot of everything around content that we used to like be able to scrape together on forums from whatever we saw competitions overseas. So it's really like you touched on that. I'm like, wow, dude, it's bringing up so much nostalgia from like the early days, at least my early days.
Yeah, I think that's been a source of improvement, but also what works in Korea and what works in like a really dense city like Seoul doesn't necessarily map to, more regional parts of North America and things like that. Like there's a reason things like normalize the way they are. And I think a lot of good learnings were taken from what works in Korea. A lot of bad learnings were taken from it. I think that's like, there's always a cautionary tale. There's always okay, I have this information. Now let's like reapply it to my setting. Does it fit there? And, whether it's roster choices or how to practice and things like that. I think people try to import strategies from winners and just say like, well, if we just do that, we'll win too.
Yeah.
Without kind of like appreciating that there's so much more nuance to regional differences. So totally understand how you came up. And I think a lot of people were inspired to follow the Koreans and mostly to good outcomes from that.
And after you went through all that, you transitioned into team leadership roles in esports. So what made you decide, you know what, I think I want to transition from broadcasting to actually something else? What was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah, it wasn't a transition I ever intended to make. And to be honest, like I was a shy kid who, had plenty of imposter syndrome. So even becoming a commentator was a surreal journey for me, I wasn't the guy who wanted to perform in front of the class or put up my hand and ask questions, I was a quiet, clever kid. And so commentary ended up being something that pushed me to like evolve past my comfort zone and something I really, really enjoyed. I was very successful at it. And honestly, if I had it my way, I would have continued to evolve in the commentary space. There's a lot of things I wanted to do. I was really driven by, one of the things I was really impacted by was that there was a news article, an interview with Captain Jack, who now a very, very forgotten player, but he was a very famous player on early Korean League Legends. You think of like Azubu Blaze, for example, and CJ Entus, like he was a big player. Nowadays, if someone's familiar with him who's not, back from my day, they know about the Captain Jack cleanse, which is like instantly cleansing a stun ability or a CC ability in League of Legends, comes from him. Obviously, his name a reference to Pirates of the Caribbean, for other people who are wondering. And he gave an interview, and it was like with an English publication, and they asked him, "Hey, what does it mean for you that like the English fans call it a Captain Jack cleanse when someone pulls off an amazing cleanse?" And this was like towards the end of his career. So I want to say it was like 2015. It's like, he was one of the best AD carries in the world in 2012. So it's like, towards the end of his career. And he responded, "Oh, they call it that? I didn't know." And I was like, wait, like every broadcaster around the world uses this term that he's never even heard. And that, like, how can that be? It was like was my first thought. And for context, League of Legends was unique in Korea because it was the first title where on stage, on the one hand was the Korean casters, on the other hand was the English casters, and there was English casting in person from day one of competition, which is like, January 2012. So, a year before the LCS started, for context. So the fact that there had been visible English commentary and thus memes and like discussion from day one, and 3.5 years into that, a Korean star had never even heard that they were like a global household name, like kind of caused me to like go into a flurry of like, how is this possible? And what I really wanted to do at the time in Korea, it was very popular to, and I think it's probably still to this day, but I'm a little bit finger off the pulse, is they love to have these shows where people from around the world who spoke Korean would talk about like their perspectives and things like that, like that you would have like an American who speaks Korean, like someone from Africa who speaks Korean, and they would do like a global summit of like, let's talk about the world in Korean, so that obviously can be understood by the local audience. And so I really wanted to do double subtitled content with, the famous Korean people. So at the time, Cloud Templar was a retired pro, was a very respected analyst, a little bit like myself. He's still around to this day. And I wanted to kind of like do things that like highlighted how two cultures or communities around esports had grown in parallel, but not really intersected as much as you would think. Like obviously both of them knew Faker was amazing, but like the fact that this meme could exist that didn't, and there was no awareness, like let's highlight the cool things that the Koreans think about trending and historical topics. Let's highlight the cool things that the English fans have about trending topics, and like compare and contrast. And I knew it would be a banger. Like I knew that people would want it, but because you were a second language broadcast, there never was like the resources for that. I'm sure you guys are aware of this in like all of esports. Like for the thing that you're like focused on, there's resources. For the like emergent thing that could be cool, that isn't really like, there's not really a proof of concept of, it doesn't really get off the ground. And so by 2019, when I signed my contract with Riot Korea, I was like, look, I really think we need to do content. I understand you guys still in like your formative phase and like getting your sea legs under you. In my contract, I needed that we're going to have a podcast, because I'd always wanted to do like a League of Legends podcast for the Korean scene. There wasn't one at that time. And obviously podcasts were more of a radio thing. And just like there was like a lot less of them. And nowadays everyone has a podcast, right? But in 2018, 2019, there was less. And so given that, I had it written into my contract, there will be an English language podcast, which didn't happen. Like they couldn't get it off the ground. And I still enjoyed casting, but at that time, like I came into casting with very limited goals. I was like, I just want to cast in Korea. Wouldn't that be awesome? And then I was like, it's my dream to cast a Korean final. And by then I had cast every final in a row from 2015 summer. I never even dreamed. I thought it would be cool to do a Riot International event, but I didn't like have high expectations that I'd be able to earn that. And then I had cast Worlds from 2016 onwards and cast 3 World Finals in a row from 2017 onwards. And so I really wanted to grow in the like high production value content side, and Riot wasn't able to like accommodate that. And I have a very, very strong growth mindset. I always want to know about where I'm going next and how I'm going to get there. If I'm not the best, I want to know where I am, what I can do to improve and get there. I'm never going to step over anyone, but I'm going to work tirelessly because I only want to be the best. And I felt like I was stuck. And while I was appreciated where I was, I wanted more, and I wanted the ability to invest more to grow something. And so I was doing VOD reviews. Like, this is before co-streaming. There was no ability to go over the live games. So I was doing VOD reviews of different games, and I VOD reviewed 100 Thieves game. I think it was the game where Bang really popped off. Like, they had a rough start to spring 2019, and then Bang had a big game. And I got a DM from Melk, who's now one of the leaders of 100 Thieves. And he said, hey, saw your VOD review, like, would you be interested in a job at 100 Thieves? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, what kind of job are we talking about? And he was like, oh, what about general manager? And like, I was aware enough to know that general manager is a very senior kind of position in an esports org. Like, I wasn't coming in as the water boy, right? This is a very senior position. And it's like, only in a nascent field can you go from like broadcast talent to general manager. Like, it's quite a crazy kind of jump. You know, I talk to people who came from traditional sports, and they're told like, you can start as an analyst and within 30 years you might be able to become a general manager. So I just looked at that, and it seemed like a place where I could like author a lot of the sort of things I wanted to author about. Like, what kind of players did we sign? What kind of content do we want to do? Like, I wanted to be a one-stop shop, and that was what drew me to it. I knew there was no way to get the same level of authorship around the broadcast. I had tried, you know, in every way I could. And so it was a little bit of the, if you love something, you have to let it go free kind of thing. Like, if I could have found growth opportunities in commentary, I would definitely have taken them, because I love to tell the story of Korean League of Legends. To be honest, I felt a lot of, what word do I want to use here? Ownership's not the right word, but I definitely, because I had, at that time, Korean League of Legends was 7 years old. It started in 2012. This is end of 2019. And I had watched every game of the first 3.5 years, and I had commentated almost every game of the next 3.5 years. So I felt a lot of ownership around, like, I have more knowledge than Wikipedia does about League of Legends in English. Like, probably no one in the world knows more than me. And I want to share that, and I want to bring more people in, rather than kind of like, it wasn't like a point of pride. It was like a point of like, if I don't make this content, if I don't share this, like, it'll be lost kind of thing, if you know what I mean. So I kind of had to let that go free and build something on the team side. And so the 100 Thieves opportunity, and very much a blank slate. They had just come off a really poor year, and they were like, you got the keys to the castle. I was ready to have the keys to the castle, and yeah, didn't know that would be the opportunity that brought me in, but it ended up being the one I took.
And did you also get a similar phone call or DM from FlyQuest?
So different times, right? So in 2020, went to be a general manager, and first year was rough. We rebuilt, found success, won the LCS at the end of 2021. Made 3 finals in a row, first, second over the course of 2021 summer until the end of 2022. And then the project kind of reached a natural end. And to be honest, I was having a lot of conversations with orgs in Europe, because I thought, okay, my extended family's in Europe, you know, North America is just me. This is like a natural time for me to like go to the next chapter, right? I've kind of like lived all around the world, so I was going to go do the next thing, and then was connected with the new ownership of FlyQuest. So I wasn't even aware that they were under new ownership. And when I had the first call, I thought I was just giving like kind of like free consulting. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't go into it with any mindset of getting a job. It was just like, hey, these people just got in, they're new, they don't really know the space. Like, can you just like talk to them about this investment they've made? And I was like, sure, of course. Like, why wouldn't I help people? And chatted with them, and the call went well. And they said like, hey, would you want to have a call with the owner of FlyQuest the next time? And I was like, yeah, I mean, if he has questions to ask, like, why not, right? And yeah, there was not a cynical bone in my body at that point. It was just a chat. I had a really, really positive conversation. And to your question, kind of the thing that it evolved to was basically like, hey, like, do you want to like be the business lead of FlyQuest? Like, do you want to just be in charge of an entire organization? Was what was put to me by the owner. And for context, at my time in 100 Thieves, definitely there were a lot of moments when you're at a really, really big multi-game organization, and I'm just in charge of the League of Legends program, right? Where you sit there and talk to people and you're like, damn, man, I would have done that differently about things that are like way outside your purview. And we've all done this, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
It's like, come on, like, what are the leaders doing over there? Like, why this, why that? Or like, what about us? Like, we're winning over here. Like, surely we can like do more content or like draw more attention to us. Like, I had a lot of those moments. And then, someone with ultimate power was just like, well, what about you then? And I sat there and I was like, wait, like, I wasn't intending to stay in North America, but it was a put up or shut up moment, right? It's like, you can't be the guy who like slags off the players when you're watching like traditional sports, and then they offer you the power, and then you're like, actually, no, I don't want to do that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Was the way I thought about it. It's like, now I've been given the opportunity to do it myself. And so, as has been tradition, I took the put up rather than shut up approach. And yeah, ended up accepting a role at FlyQuest as a co-lead. So that was, I want to say September 2022 when we were having that conversation. So we're 2.5 years into the reign, but it wasn't quite a DM to your question, but it wasn't that different either.
This was back in the days when, everybody was getting jobs, but yeah, Twitter DMs.
As basically,
I disappoint a lot of people. I was at an award ceremony in the last week, and they're like, can you give me a LinkedIn? I'm like, I still don't have a LinkedIn, bro. Like, I'm telling
you, man, esports operates so differently. Like, there's a version of it on LinkedIn, there's a version of it on Twitter, and I think up until like maybe last year or like year and a half, because I feel like Twitter's been kind of like degrading a little bit, in like just conversation value and stuff like that. But like, I've met a lot of people that I got to work with and do cool stuff within gaming and esports. Or people have like come up to me at events like, hey, are you Rutso? Simply because Twitter, just our online presence there. Now I've, obviously like I've kind of made it a point because on a more professional scale and level, I think some career paths are more so driven about who knows you at a professional scale. So I think that's where LinkedIn is starting to become a lot more valuable for folks, especially in gaming, as we're like, building more, I suppose, or just reframing what we built, building on what we believe is going to be better for the ecosystem. LinkedIn is starting to serve a bigger purpose. But back then it was like the Wild West. You commented on someone and you had an opinion, like, all right, come on board, let's do the thing, show us how to get it done. And you had like one chance or one opportunity, and then like, it was crazy the way the amount of cool stuff I've gotten to do in my lifetime simply because of the way that esports operates.
Yeah, and like this, I'm not saying either is right or wrong, like,
for sure.
Again, from the no gatekeeping perspective, like, I think that I was given a lot of opportunities that, required a leap of faith from the person that was giving them. And if they misjudged that, then I would have been exactly the wrong person for the position. I'd like to think that I've risen to those opportunities. But I've just tried my best to kind of just offer who I am and kind of like pass myself off for judgment and bet on myself. And so
I love that, by the way. Yeah. And like, hats off to you, because, and I've been speaking to people on the NZXT chat, because I'm like, I think me and PapaSmithy share the same brain. There's a lot of stuff that you've been saying that I just kind of like, oh my gosh, like, this is awesome. Like, you've been hitting points that I just totally agree with.
It's a beard thing, right? We've got beards, they don't. So
exactly. I'll catch up here, and then, but in the meantime, Yeah,
Mike-
we'll bond over the beard.
I mean, esports
Mike and
also
I-
takes away from up here too. I'll tell you that much.
It's not
Okay,
a beard
I'll-
thing. I think it's a brain thing. Mike and I don't have brains, so that's probably why.
I could argue the same. No, but yeah, thank you for sharing all that. By the way, before we move on to the next point, I just want to highlight that there's a lot of stuff that you're saying that I kind of admire, strictly because those are things that I also kind of go by. There's concepts that I consider like selfishly selfless, and I feel like being selfishly selfless, and that is the more you have, the more you get, the more you're able to offer and provide to people. And I feel like a lot of the opportunities that you've taken so far, it's kind of you've recognized, especially because you've had a little, you've had a lot. You kind of see the spectrum of how often those opportunities come to you, and you recognize the opportunity isn't always going to be there when someone offers you to be a general manager, to be, an executive. And like you said, going from a caster's perspective where you're like, hey, I thought my life was going to go in this direction. I thought I could scale it in this way. And then life is like, actually, hold on a second right there. Let me get you something else. And the fact that you're able to recognize
change is scary, right? That's the truth. Is like I'm very
Exactly.
reticent to change. Like a lot of this has been getting out of my comfort zone, but
Yeah,
I think
precisely.
an early example that you'd probably appreciate, because it's like a community podcast example, is Page Time and I wanted to start an Australian esports talk show, like mostly around League of Legends, and it was really tricky to get guests because the guests would be like, "Oh, like how many viewers do you get? And like, does it pay?" And I'm like, "Bro, like this is the early days, like hopefully we're gonna get 20 viewers. If we get to 100, that'd be great." And they were just like, "Well, why would I do it? Like I could be practicing or going to school or whatever." And it's like, I was basically like, one thing that and again, I was older at the time. I'm 25, 26. A lot of these are really young kids. The way I explained it to them was, if we grow the pie for everyone, we grow it for ourselves. Like if we bring more people into the bucket, if we bring more people into how cool Australian League of Legends scene is, or what great personalities we have here, when those people come in, they're going to see us and they're going to respect us, and we're going to get more opportunities from that. And I think the people that took those opportunities have gone on to have great careers. Some of them are coaches in North America to this day, which again, from an Australian community podcast in 2012 to being like an LTA head coach in 2025 is quite the journey, the road less traveled. I do think it's important to have those mindsets of put yourself out there, put yourself out of your comfort zone, think a lot, because there's still mistakes to be made, but mistakes are learning opportunities rather than things to feel bad about.
Exactly. Love that.
I did want to kind of go a little bit into just FlyQuest in general. Ever since you came into this role, has there been like an ultimate goal that you want to do during your time here, or is there like a higher up goal that like it's gonna be kind of hard to do, but you really want for FlyQuest?
So the kind of like mission statement we have as a company now, that we've like only really codified, like make the gaming landscape better than we found it, is very much where my brain and Brian's and a lot of people at FlyQuest kind of intersect, because I didn't come in with like outcomes I wanted, like, like win the LTA again kind of outcomes. Like I was very kind of like happy with where I'm at. I think I have a lot of process things that I'm very, very particular on. How to build a roster the right way, how to set up a culture, how to, when it comes to players and staff, how to scout the right ones and what we want there and the size of that. And kind of like, I'm a very big believer. And to begin with, this was with competitive stuff. Obviously, hiring business staff was a new thing for me, given I hadn't done that before I came to FlyQuest. I'm a big believer in, obviously you do your first pass of people, you find the people that are qualified, and then you speak to them and you try to understand kind of like, where are they coming from? And I have the advantage of like, living all around the world, around multiple different cultures and beliefs and things like that. So I can usually build a rapport. I would say as a school counselor, my biggest strength was rapport building, which you need as a school counselor, right? Because it's like, hello, little Johnny, you've never met me before, but like your deepest, darkest secrets in your brain, could you please share those as fast as possible? Is like, kind of what counseling is, right? Obviously. So rapport building was important. And once you build rapport, I always wanted to hire people who the exact fit, the exact place they wanted to go to in their career was exactly what I was looking for from them at my opportunity. I don't want to hire people who are overqualified and like they have to compromise to come to FlyQuest. I want to like basically co-author with them in a call why like wouldn't us coming together just lead to us both getting what we want next is like kind of spoilers the way I want to lead all of these calls. And so I think that's like what I've tried to imbue into FlyQuest is it's a lot of people who have the right qualifications and experience who kind of like want to grow within FlyQuest to become more. And growth is not always like youth, for example. It's just like, I've got something I want to give that I haven't been able to give elsewhere. That's exactly what FlyQuest needs is kind of how I think about it. And that's rookie players who are trying to build their star, who are talented. That's veterans who want to mentor rookies. That's leaders who, just like me, kind of like are second generation esports. One thing I'm really proud of is our leadership group is a lot of second generation esports people who did a great role at another esports org. And then, you know, unfortunately, as is too often the story in esports, like whether that role went away or the company went away or whatever, left with misgivings, but the right kind of misgivings, like things they wanted to show and prove. And they're doing that at FlyQuest. And we get to skip over the like, couldn't have seen that coming kind of approach that sometimes you get with traditional people coming into esports, where they just try to copy a sports model without really understanding what esports is and isn't. I think we're able to skip that step. And I think that lets us do things a little bit quicker. Like I'm really proud of what we've done in the 3 years that we've been going so far.
Yeah, you've done amazing. And I'm curious what your leadership philosophy is when it comes to building a winning culture. And when I say winning culture, I'm not talking about, you know, winning League of Legends matches per se, but just, you know, when the business side of things, the company, FlyQuest as an org.
Yeah, like I said, I really do think it's a lot about setting expectations well from the advertising a role phase, like what role do we need? What does an ideal candidate look like, to the hiring phase, to the culture phase of like integrating that person into a project. And those are the sort of things that are uniform across competitive to business stuff and things like that. Like, I love people coming in who have things they want to do, who feel like they will get growth within FlyQuest. I think those things are what I feel really passionate about. And that's why we just do have a lot of new leaders, and a lot of self-starters. I think that I'm always, as a self-starter myself, I feel like I'm biased towards self-starters, and I try to like hold myself in that. But I think it's just, it's really like understanding why it's like a perfect kind of fit. And we think about that a lot. And I will say this is true of business staff hiring, but also kind of like what esports we're in and things like that, is I never want to be too fast to hire, too fast to move on from someone. I think that's kind of been the esports mantra of like, we got to get in on this trend blind. Oh, it didn't work. Never mind. I'm really proud that since I've joined FlyQuest, we've never dropped a title. We've added many titles, not like all of them instantly, but we've been very thoughtful about what games we've added to FlyQuest, and we've never moved on from a game like, oh, we love Counter-Strike, wait, we don't love Counter-Strike now kind of vibe. Like, we've stuck with the things we've done. And I think that that's important. Like, we're still a relatively small to medium-sized esports org. We really kind of think through, like, when is it the right time to make a full-time hire? And, you know, okay, why don't we start this as a part-time thing? And if it grows to full-time, that's a sign to everybody that like, this is an awesome thing. We also have promoted a lot of our leadership team from kind of like lower roles up. And I think a promotion track is a really, really important thing. I've always been a big believer in academy teams and third teams as well. Unfortunately, we don't have one now as a result of kind of some of the changes in the Riot ecosystem, but kind of bringing someone in and showing that they can grow within FlyQuest, and that it kind of has a cascading effect, whether it is competitive or business, because it's like it should be a reaffirming thing that if you work hard here and put your best foot forward, the sky's the limit.
What would you say are the biggest misconceptions people have about running an esports org?
I think just having an itchy trigger finger is like probably the thing that gets people in strife, is that you'll get a win. Sometimes it's very difficult to tell where the win comes from, and maybe that's an amazing partner like NZXT joining. Maybe that's a surprise victory in the LTA. A windfall will come your way, and you instantly like pivot everything to getting like 5 more of those because you think you've got a read on how esports works. And esports is always changing. You know, you were talking before, Ratso, about like, you know, Twitter and like how social media is, how like even metrics are calculated in games. I remember our games patch changes time and time again. Like the best decision yesterday isn't always the best decision today. And I think trying to be thoughtful and measured goes a long way in esports, but to be thoughtful and measured, you need to be patient. And patience is something that has to be earned in esports a little bit. And it's not what a lot of people have really at any level, you know, whether it's like Twitch streamers who look at other people who have more viewers than them and really wish that, why don't I have those viewers? Or
content, yeah.
Smaller esports orgs who can't work out why they're not winning now. Like, why do we have to win later? Like, funding models, depending on whether it was venture capital back in the day. Like we're lucky to have a family office where we are able to take a long-term view. I think having patience and like collecting data and then making a data-informed decision that fits you is the right way to go in esports. But it is a privilege that I'm able to take that I know other people can't. And so I definitely don't want to point and say that that's like a fit for everyone. But if you can take your time, if you can really choose your battles, I think that's one of the ways to kind of last, because, you know, the thinning of the herd has happened. A lot of esports orgs have gone under in the last 5 years. And sadly, that's probably going to still be the case 5 years from now.
And I think I kind of want to go a little bit into that, like, especially, you know, being patient and understanding. There's also that kind of other side of like seeing into the future, trying to predict what's happening in the future, what you can kind of do today. I mean, you've gone through so many years of esports and seeing different players come in and out, different teams, and the esports in general. But as you've seen throughout these major changes, what's like the biggest challenge esports is like facing today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think how to reinvigorate a esport is probably the thing I think about the most. I remember when I was commentating League of Legends in 2015-16, the game was already 7 years old. And so as a multi-game caster, like when I moved to OGN as a multi-game esports broadcaster, like you couldn't just be a League of Legends guy. So I did League of Legends and Hearthstone, for example, at that time. Did some Overwatch in the pre-Overwatch League days. And everyone was, as a freelance commentator, you kind of had to be ready to jump on the next game, right? So a lot of people already at the time were like, the prophecy was like, okay, well, League of Legends, like how much longer does it have? You know, like 2016, 2017, like it's got 1 or 2 years. And like, obviously we're 10 years later from those original conversations, and the game, every international event is hitting new viewership records. So already it's a bit unprecedented. And so you might say, well, why did League of Legends persist? And the thing to remember that's like going to be lost to a lot of the people joining us for the podcast today is that League of Legends was a free game. Like that is not a platform game that doesn't release sequels every year. Like when League of Legends was coming out in 2009, maybe someone here can Google it, but think about which Call of Duty we were on in 2009 and which Call of Duty we're on in 2025. That's been what? Probably 14 new releases since then. I know they didn't do it every year, but like 14 to 16 new Call of Duty games have come out in that time. It used to be like buy the $60 to $80 game every year, and that would like reset the player base, right? You know, and you'd have to like, you know, demand money from your parents. League of Legends was the first forever game I think about, in one of those cases where they've never asked you to pony up money to get access to the game. And that was a very, very new business model at the time that has allowed the game to persist. And obviously its breakout success meant there could be media entities like Arcane and things like that. So I think that's already something that you have to think about when you're thinking about like how titles move and how things go, is like the variables that they're constructed in and just how tastes change. And I look at Counter-Strike 2, where, our CS team, proudly wearing NZXT sponsorship, is like playing on D_Dust2. Bro, when I was 13 years old, just moved to Dubai, how did I get to know my friends? We went to the LAN cafe and we played Counter-Strike 1.5, and it was on D_Dust2. And so it's the same map 24 years ago. And at the same time, Counter-Strike 2, which is, obviously an evolution of CSGO rather than a new game, it's still the same map that I played many versions ago, is hitting viewership records every time. They've found a way to renew their audience. And I think that's the thing that I'm always waiting on, is like, what's the latest tactic to capture a new audience? There's obviously new titles, like Marvel Rivals does really well on TikTok. Not a big surprise. Marvel games are big. The game is new and free, and TikTok is the best place to share clips. So I think that definitely like renewing yourself and keeping yourself young. When I was I'm 38 now, which is obviously like esports ancient territory when it comes to competitive stuff. Hey, you guys aren't competitive stuff. Don't worry about it.
You are a sage to us.
But when I think about being a school counselor, I would have been 25 when I graduated. One of the ways I built rapport was I asked the kids what they were into, and at that time Minecraft had just came out, and they were like, "Oh, I've been playing Minecraft," and I was like, "Oh, Minecraft, I'm playing that too," and they're like, "Wait, like I've never met an adult that's ever played Minecraft before," like I stayed current, and even though the thinning hair and beard with gray shows it, I've always tried to keep my finger on the pulse. Like I'll never gatekeep, back in my day kind of thoughts on it, because at the end of the day, we have an audience that some of them came in yesterday and some of them are still around from 15 years ago, and we appreciate them equally. And so helping give resources to the new person and helping reinvent yourself and kind of back in my day story for the older fan is really important. And I think I'm excited to see how League of Legends will continue to tackle that problem. Obviously, the Arcane has been helpful. And one of the things I've been the most critical of on Arcane is it should have been like, my impression from what I've heard behind the scenes is they didn't realize how much of a hit Arcane would be until very close to release. I think it went through a very, very long development cycle. And it was like 2 years before, if you had asked the people working on it, they'd be like, I don't know if it'll come together. And then 2 months before, they're like, wait, this is going to be amazing. If they had the insight earlier, a new player experience being created that like brought those two worlds together, rather than just like play Garen with Thornmail kind of vibe that it is, would have been the accelerating event that would have brought a lot of people onto League of Legends. I was very disheartened at kind of the vibe of like, I just watched Arcane, it was amazing. Like, should I play League of Legends? No, is like
no,
kind of like,
don't do it. Yeah, like
that's like one of the most hurtful things that can happen to your game coming back into and extending its lifetime. And I think that's an unlucky one. I think of it like as a mistake rather than a curse. Like League is still relevant enough that it'll get many more goes at that, and I hope one of them sticks, kind of like CS2 has proven to stick as a way to refresh the player base, because the game is still great. Like I said, I'm back into it after 5 years, having a great time. Obviously, the same frustrations that grinded my gears 10 years ago still grind my gears to this day, but like it's a really playable game. But advertising it to the Zoomer suits today who are like, isn't that the old game? Yeah, it is. And it's on Riot to kind of like burst through that door. And I don't think just saying 2 is going to be enough. Like it needs to be multiple factors, but there's many smart people at Riot that get paid a lot of money that can look into that. So yeah, a little bit of a side story, but I hope it still answers your question.
It did. And I can sit here and talk about Dust 2 all day. I love that map. And
hell yeah, brother.
I do have one final question for you before we get into a fun little game Mike put together here for you. It's probably the hardest question of the day, so I hope you're ready to answer it. My question to you, PapaSmithy, is why do you love esports?
I think that the thing I love the most about esports is the fact that whatever brought you to esports is a badge of honor and an awesome thing to embrace rather than something to gatekeep you about or hold you back from success in. Like, I love the fact that I walk into our LTA room and our LTA team will be practicing today. And we have a top laner from Belgium, a jungler from Poland, a mid laner from Korea, an AD carry from Canada by way of Iraq, and a support who's a true blue North American boy. Like, there's so many different cultures. Coaches are from Norway, Spain, and Korea. Like, it's such a multicultural existence, which obviously, like, given the fact that I've lived over the world, I kind of like resonate with everybody at a different pace or in a different way. And what brings them together is this amazing game that they have dedicated so much of their life to. And they can solve problems and create opportunities and laugh and cry and feud and be bonded together by computer games. And I'll never forget what my dad said, when I was growing up, again, no view of esports or like thinking there was going to be a vocation in gaming. Like, I wasn't going to be like a coder or something like that. I just was a player. My dad was always like super discouraging of playing games, like, hey, like he was very much from because he's, baby boomer. So like, an older gentleman, 78 now. Hope you're doing well, Dad. Good old John Smith, very much sort of name that gets you in trouble with some of those like online name generators. He was always like, you should be doing scholarly things with your time, like you should be doing things that will like help you get a job or help you improve and things like that. But I enjoyed video games. And then finally got my first opportunity to get like, and then I was doing all this unpaid casting and things. And that's like a distraction from work kind of thing. And then finally got the opportunity to get like a, salaried, full-time casting thing. I'm like, well, what do you have to say now, Dad? And you know what he said? He said, shut up, son. But it was from the heart, like I was able to like self-build this career, all these like yin yang or left right moments where I made a decision. I built all of this to where it is now. And to see people, second, third generation compared to me, obviously the generation is a lot shorter in gaming, right? It's like a shorter timeline, able to pop it from that and kind of like get paid well and looked after and like take competitive game as a full-time pursuit. Like I know how far we've come to get there, and I love setting those people up for success, and very proud of what they're able to do under the FlyQuest banner. So ultimately it's like it just hits all the pleasure centers in the right way. It doesn't mean there's not hard days, doesn't mean that it's straightforward every time and there's like existential threats abound, but if I can bring in a group of people who want to take video games seriously and try to build an empire out of that, obviously some amazing business stuff and community people and things around that, and just try to sell. I just really love video games, especially League of Legends, and wouldn't it be awesome to win from North America in them? I don't know. It resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with a lot of people out there.
Well, that's a amazing and beautiful answer. And now Mike is going to ruin it with a really dumb game. So, Mike,
hell yeah, brother.
I'll let you take it away, Mike.
Alrighty. So you have dual citizenship, correct, in Australia and UK?
Yeah, I mean, on the British side is familial rather than like identifying with. I definitely identify on the Aussie side.
Oh, you do. So I'm very curious though to see if you tend to favor the Australian truly, or you tend to actually like a lot of the British like stuff. So I'll
give you honest answers. I would tell you that I would describe myself as always going the Australian way, but who knows? Maybe I'll betray myself with my answers.
That's what I'm wondering, because sometimes there will be something with food or culture or stuff like that. So I'm going to ask you two different things, and I want you to decide which one between the two you would decide on choosing, basically. So first one, Vegemite or Marmite?
Both terrible.
If you had to choose one, which one though?
I guess cheese and Vegemite is okay, so I would go with that, but they're both terrible.
Tim Tams or Jaffa Cakes?
Tim Tams.
Oh, wow. Okay, so another Australian one. Meat pie or Cornish pasty?
Meat pie, baby.
Oh, again, another Australian one. Okay.
A hot one, too. None of those, there's British ones that are cold. No.
Chicken parmy or bangers and mash?
I'm not a big palmy man, and that is kind of the Australian food. So we'll go with the bangers and mash on that.
Oh, there we go. Would you rather do an Aussie brekkie or a full English breakfast?
Australian breakfast is by far the best in the world. Aussie breakfast every time.
And that's like avocado toast and like eggs and stuff, right?
Yeah, avocado toast, a bit of halloumi. Like in general, it's just kind of like a, highbrow breakfast, but it's always yummy.
Leamington or sticky toffee pudding?
Again, I'm kind of in the neither camp, but I guess if I had to choose, I'd probably go British again. So maybe the sticky toffee.
Okay. So it looks like a lot of the sweets. Okay. An Aussie barbecue or a Sunday roast?
Ooh, this is one where, again, I'm going to be naughty, but I love me a Sunday roast. So yeah, always tasty.
Would you watch tennis at the Australian Open or Wimbledon?
Wimbledon's more prestigious for sure. Probably just default to Aussie Open because I grew up with it in my time zone. But, if there was a power ranking, Wimbledon would be above the Aussie Open.
Are you, separately, but are you familiar with, what's his name? Sydney Ball?
No.
He used to be one of like the top ranked tennis players coming from Australia. Yeah,
I'm definitely on the boomer side with tennis. Like if you ask me, like name an Australian tennis player, it'd be like Leighton Hewitt or Mark Philippoussis, like the 90s kind of like tennis players. But the newer generation, I'm well out of practice on.
Would you rather have the deadly animals in Australia or the rain and more rain in the UK?
I take the animals every time, baby.
Oh.
What?
I'm a capable man. I can get past the deadly animals. I'm not scared of spiders.
Can you like show with your hands the biggest spider you've seen?
See, this is where you guys get it wrong. I know Americans come in and they're like, but if I go to Australia, there's going to be massive spiders and drop bears. Like that's like the things you guys are scared of. A, the drop bears are just urban legends, and B, the venomous spiders are the small ones, not the big ones. If they're a big spider, they're chill. Go pet them. But if it's a small spider with a bit of color on them, stay well away.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, how about the spider? Since you said that there's like the size, do you care more about the spiders in like Britain, or do you care more about spiders in Australia then?
Oh, the Australia ones are more deadly. Again, there's just like a bigger variety of them, and the temperature is like hotter, so like they're not getting washed away by the rain. So for sure, spider wise, you got to be more aware. But the misnomer is, oh, it's a huge big spider, it'll get me. And look, we all played Diablo and like the massive spiders, the creepy crawlies, but you'll learn that the colorful small spiders, those are the ones like the redbacks, for example. If you look those up, those are extremely deadly.
Ooh, big chills. Weather in Australia or weather in the UK?
Easy. Australia every day of the week.
Ooh, okay. Wait, really? It doesn't get like blistering hot though?
Yeah, that's what air conditioning's for, bro.
I just moved to Vegas. So.
How do I turn the rain off? An umbrella is not an appropriate answer. You stay inside and game.
What do you mean?
Yeah, but sometimes you gotta go places, brother.
That's fair. Yeah.
And these answers might be evolving because again, like I'm thinking about times when you can't just like DoorDash or bring everything to you, right? Like usually you kind of have to go out to do things, but the sedentary gamer lifestyle does allow you to bring everything to you in 2025. So yeah, if there's no air conditioning, then we can be British, but like let's just assume we're Aussie for this one.
And then the final one, the capitals. Which one do you prefer, London or Canberra?
You'd take London over Canberra for sure. Canberra's kind of like, if you guys don't know, Canberra's like equidistant from Melbourne and Sydney, and basically is the capital because Melbourne and Sydney couldn't decide which one to be the capital, so they went with this other like kind of like sleepy kind of place. Whereas, London is, it's not the city for me, but it's like, it's one of the iconic, world destinations and has an amazing history. So Canberra's sleepy political town, London's London, easy choice London.
Nice. Well, actually, I'm actually surprised that you actually chose kind of like not a full even split, but you actually
A hodgepodge.
Hodgepodge. Yeah, there you go. Before I go to announcements, PapaSmithy, do you have anything you want to say to the audience or any sort of events going on or announcements?
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot going on. I would appreciate if you guys are interested or have enjoyed this conversation to follow twitter.tv/FlyQuest. We have a lot of sub accounts from there, and obviously I have my own account, PapaSmithy, but I think on the FlyQuest account, you'll get little cross sections of all the things we're up to. June is a pretty crazy month. We have an unannounced event coming up that we're excited about, but even when it comes to like public things, the LTA finals are coming up. We're already locked into the winners bracket. We play against Cloud9 next Saturday, so not tomorrow, but the Saturday coming to lock in a place at EWC and also the grand final and potentially get a trophy lift and go to MSI if we're able to win that grand final. So that's excitement coming up. I'm actually jetting off on Monday to join our Aussie boys and their beautiful NZXT Aussie jerseys over at the Major. The Counter-Strike 2 Major starts on Tuesday this coming week. So very much it's like the tentpole esports events are all coming up. We're not far away from MSI itself starting. So I think there's like a lot of excitement when it comes to this is the part that you're ready for. It feels like the first 4 or 5 months are like the rising energy to the payoff, and the payoff is starting to come. So very, very exciting stuff going on there. So yeah, if you're interested in anything to do with FlyQuest, please come on board.
Also, drop bears are very real. I've seen one in real life. Don't lie to the people.
It's a myth.
I don't even know. Drop bears are koalas?
They're just koalas, bro.
Koala bears that drop from the trees.
Aww.
They rip your throats out.
Totally. I saw that movie as well. Don't worry about it.
Alrighty. I'll go into a little bit of announcements, and then I'll give the secret word that give 500 extra entries into the giveaway. First, we just launched a bunch of new stuff. We launched a new micro ATX case, the H3 Flow, our newly updated H9 Flow, a Kraken Elite 420, and a line of Kraken Plus coolers available in 240, 280, and 360 millimeters. So you can take a look at nzxt.co/new stuff or ! New stuff in chat. You can take a look on our website, nzxt.com. We have stuff going on for our club, the NZXT Club. You can see right there in the chat, Harbor Quest, to claim Poochie points. You can basically do some fun quests, and you get these things called Poochie points, which is our mascot. And you can use those points to get free stuff. We literally do monthly giveaways for peripherals and cases and stuff like that. So take a look at nzxt.co/club or !club in the chat. Let's see. Oh, follow PapaSmithy on Twitter or X and YouTube. I have !PapaSmithy in chat. You guys can take a look at his link tree. Please follow him because honestly, this guy's been through like pretty much anything you can think of, and he is one of the most knowledgeable people in the esports community. So if you guys want to see some really dope stuff that he and FlyQuest are cooking, please follow them. I think that is it. Ivan, Rui, do you have anything before I give the secret code word out?
I just want to thank PapaSmithy for his time. I appreciate him spending a couple of hours with us here, as Rudy likes to say, on the horn. So thank you, PapaSmithy, for joining us today.
Yeah, much appreciated, and shout out to NZXT. You guys have come on board and supported us in our journey. In accepting an award for Esports Leader of the Year last week. Haven't talked about it on socials yet, but we'll get it out there. One of the things I called out was that our partners have taken a leap of faith with us. Obviously, there's other more statured esports orgs who've been around for a long time that have the big numbers, whether those numbers are current or their legacy, and coming on to join the FlyQuest journey when we've been in this kind of like rising arc for the last couple of years, and supporting us through it has been much, much appreciated. The things that we do, the trophy lift we had last year wouldn't have been possible without NZXT. So big shout out to you guys. You make the magic happen over here.
Of course.
Making us blush.
Alrighty. So for those that are here, there is a little entry part for a secret code word that gives 500 extra entries into the $100 gift card for FlyQuest store. I'm sorry, PapaSmithy, I had to do it to you. The code word is light mode. Light mode, because of that infamous VOD review. Do you still use light mode, or did you switch back to dark?
I'm a light mode man. I had a screen filter when I was a kid. No screen filter, light mode, doing just fine. My eyes still work.
I thought we had a lot in common. Not after that.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I wish I would have known that before the podcast started. I'm sorry.
Never meet your heroes, huh?
Alrighty, thank you guys for joining us. And remember, tune in live on Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on the official NZXT Twitch. And don't forget to listen to previous episodes of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. If you got any questions for us, send an email to podcast@nzxt.com or tag @NZXT on social media platforms. Thank you, PapaSmithy, for joining us today. Follow him on Twitter and YouTube. Follow FlyQuest on all socials. And we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much. And thank you, PapaSmithy.
Take care.